take a look at what we have here. Oh! Hey, if you're a fan of classic rock going back into the 80s, I think you're going to enjoy what we have for you here today. Now, if you're a regular follower of this channel, you may have noticed that we have been a little sporadic with the videos the last week and a half or so. And just so you know, we filmed this video in a full production studio that I own. Now, what the problem that causes sometimes is that people actually rent this place. And the last couple of weeks, we have had a bunch of different clients come in here and rent this. And as a matter of fact, one of them rented this place for several days, and I was here working with them until actually almost midnight a few times. And then we'd be back here early in the morning. And it's been so busy around here. And then by the time we were finishing up with all these different projects people had in the studio, I flew out to Denver to go to my grandson's lacrosse game. And naturally, he was the best player on the team. That's right, I'm talking about you, kiddo. And I'm wearing a t-shirt they gave me. So I was there all weekend and then came back, and we've just kind of getting everything back together. And so we're going to try not to let that happen again. And so, but anyway, that's what's been going on. We've had, people have been contacting us on the website to see what's happening, and just everything's fine. We just have been a little bit overwhelmed here in the studio. And we're trying to build things up in such a way that we can make sure that we have more people here. I'm actually putting out some offers to some people that are going to start working here to help with editing and things, so that we don't have any more of those kind of spaces where we're not putting content out. Anyway, that's what's going on. And so we've got here is three different records that came in during this period. Just wanted to show you what we had, and we're going to be doing videos about these. But as usual, it's kind of fun to open them up and kind of experience this together as these records arrive that we're going to be making videos about. So let's bust into these and take a look at what we've got here. I'm going to set these aside. So let's open this one up and see what we have. Try not to chop into the record as well. Oh, this one has that kind of perforated thing here. All right, let's take a look at what we have here. Ooh. They've got, okay, let's take a look here. Oh, so Gary has been telling me that we needed to get this so that we could do a video about Living Color on the album Vivid. Now, this album came out in it's so hard to believe this. This album came out in 1988. I'm going to pull it out of the plastic here. And I remember this song Cult of Personality specifically, just getting played on MTV, seemed like constantly. And it was such a great tune. It actually had a riff. When I remember the first time I heard Cult of Personality, it was reminiscent of House of a Thousand Pleasures by Ezio, the guitar hook in it. And so Gary's actually been suggesting, he says, we need to talk about this. And there's Cult of Personality, of course. And then the other one, I think Open Letter to a Landlord was pretty cool. I remember Glamour Boys was kind of a hit off of this album. But this was just kind of a really cool thing. And there's something kind of interesting about it that you'll notice right there, that this was produced in part by Mick Jagger, of all people. So anyway, we'll do a video about this sometime soon, because like I said, Gary's been suggesting that we get our hands on that one and make a video about it. So anyway, cool. So here's let's take a look at this next one. Another eBay find. And like I said, some of these are just albums that we've been talking about needing to do videos about. And what happens is, a lot of, even though I was a big record collector back in the 80s and kind of continue to be, even back then in the 80s, even though I was buying a lot of records, there were a lot of things that I didn't buy on vinyl. Maybe I bought it on a CD or a cassette. And actually, in some cases, there were some albums I had that I just never owned because people made, all of us experienced that. People made cassette tapes for each other. Excuse me. And so I'm ordering here. Oh, yeah. I never owned this vinyl. So this, of course, and I think actually I bought a new copy of this one. but this is Ride the Lightning. You kind of just have to own this one. And I'll be honest with you, I was not a big fan of Metallica back in the 80s. And I don't know what it was. It just didn't hit me for some reason. I didn't really love at the time James Hadfield's voice. And there was just something about it. But it's been I'm one of those people that kind of came along a little bit later. And when the Black album came out, I know this is a totally unpopular position to have, but when the Black album came out, that actually somehow woke up in me to be interested in Metallica. And then I started rewinding a little bit and kind of gained an appreciation that I hadn't had during the 80s. And so when you look back at this album, it's so interesting looking at this now, because Dave Mustaine, who I'm a big fan of for Megadeth, he actually has, I think it's Ride the Lightning. This is the last time that you'd really see him. I don't think there's any more in future albums where you'd have a reference to Dave Mustaine, but he was actually given some writing credit on Ride the Lightning. And that's such an interesting song because, as you probably know, Metallica, they were big fans of Diamond Head. And it's funny because when I was a teenager, I remember going to just some old kind of used record store like we used to do when I was a young guy. And we'd go downtown a couple times a year and hit these used record stores back in the 80s. And one time I was there, I saw this album and it was called Living on Borrowed Time. And it was by some band I'd never heard of called Diamond Head. And I took it home and I listened to it and I loved it. And it had this song on there called Am I Evil? Now, if you're a Metallica fan, you've definitely heard that song, even if you were never a Diamond Head fan, because that's like if you saw the Big Four, they played that song live all together. And that song, Am I Evil, had such an influence on so many of these people that were kind of thrash metal back in the 80s. And when you listen to the song Ride the Lightning, you'll hear that influence in that song. If you listen to Am I Evil by Diamond Head, you'll hear that influence in that tune. And I actually really love Diamond Head. I had that album Living on Borrowed Time, and then I found another one that was I'll have to get it out sometime. It's called Diamond Lights, and it's kind of a little EP that they put out. And anyway, and then they just kind of disappeared. And then they kind of became popular again because Metallica made them popular again. But anyway, so I was kind of a fair weather fan back then. I didn't care. I didn't love Metallica back in the 80s. But then as I go back now, and I mean, you listen to a song called like For Whom the Bell Tolls, and it's such a great tune. I mean, that song is just guitar hook after guitar hook. I mean, it's really kind of amazing. And so anyway, this was kind of an important album. This was their second album, of course, and the album cover I always thought this was pretty cool too. So anyway, we'll do a video about this, but anyway, this is a pretty cool one. I'm excited about. Okay, I know what's in this last one, and I'm very, very pumped to get this album. I never had this on vinyl. I actually never even had this on anything, because somebody made a cassette tape of this for me back when I was a teenager. And I listened to that cassette tape over and over and over. I used to listen to it when I was walking to school. And anyway, this one I'm super pumped to get my hands on. And let's see here. Because like I said, I used to listen to this, and it was the thing that really introduced me to this band's kind of earlier stuff. Yeah, this is really cool. I'm super excited. I never bought this, never had this on vinyl, never had this on anything. And so I thought we have to do some videos about this album, because for me, it was such an important part of my development as just somebody that loved music. And so I found this one. Some of you can already tell what it is through the bubble wrap. And it is, of course, Exit Stage Left from Rush. And I like I said, I got this thing. Somebody put it on a cassette tape for me, and I used to listen to this over and over and over. And it was pretty fascinating because I'd become familiar with live albums through Kiss. because I was a Kiss fan, of course, and Alive 2, I must have listened to hundreds and hundreds of times. I've talked about that several times on this channel. And then, of course, Alive. And so you kind of get a sense when you're a kid for what a live album sounds like, and you know how they did those mixes with those songs. They pumped up the audience, and it just kind of created that really live energy by putting all that audience noise in it and what have you. But this album almost didn't sound like a live album because it was just so perfect. And this is the first time I ever heard Red Barchetta. There were so many great things on this record. And it just absolutely fell in love with this thing. I listened to it so many times. And then, of course, it has, when you flip it over and you look at it, it has all the references to all the albums that came prior to this. Of course, there's Paula Turnbull from Permanent Waves, although the waves are a little different in her hair there. And, anyway, you go through this thing and there's a bunch of different, the front and back have all these references to the previous albums. And so we're going to definitely do some at least one, if not multiple videos just on this record, because this had such a big impact on me. There were so many great tunes on here. It was, this album was actually, it came out in 1981, and it was a bits and pieces of tour things that they'd done on the Moving Pictures tour, which is what came out before this, was the studio album before this one, and also from the Permanent Waves tour. And then they just compiled it and put this live album together and put this out again back in 1981. And it was just so spectacular. It had I just keep saying it over and over, but I listened to this thing over and over and over again and just absolutely fell in love with it. And it's what introduced me then to kind of the Rush's back catalog. Because, I've talked about this before, but I think the first Rush stuff that I ever heard was Limelight, Spirit of Radio. And then, of course, you hear Tom Sawyer, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest band. And then you hear this, and then you start going back, and you think, man, they had so much great stuff. So anyway, and this was their second live album. I later heard All the World's a Stage, loved that album too. And so anyway, we'll be talking about this some more. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. We're going to be doing some videos about these things. I'm very excited about it. And we've got a bunch of other things coming up in the near future we're going to be doing on the channel. We're hiring new people, and we've got some different types of shows we're going to be putting out really soon that I'm very excited about, that I hope you'll enjoy. And we always appreciate your feedback on these things as we put them out. Please leave your comments what you thought of these albums, because I'm sure people watching this thing, you probably heard and owned all these different things. I know that a lot of people had different experiences with Metallica. There were people that loved them back in the 80s when I just didn't get it back then. And then as I've gotten older, the more I've kind of learned to appreciate them more. And then also Living Colour. If you were into this stuff, if you remember this, what this was like, how this impacted you, what did you think about this music when this came out? Because this was so different. There was a different energy. There was something really spectacular about this at the time. So anyway, love to get your feedback on that stuff. And of course, if you're not following the channel, please follow the channel. Share this video with other people. If you know other people that are interested in this kind of stuff, we really, really appreciate that. And like the video, leave your comments, of course. And with that, have yourself a fantastic day.